Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Saunders. I'm a product manager here at Basemap. Thank you very much for your time today and attending our Basemap track for District Council's webinar. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a couple of different case studies of how district councils are using our TRACC system to help basically them in their sustainable kind of planning and green space development. So to start off with, we want to find out why do you as a district council need to have accurate travel time analysis. So what we've done here is we've looked at the National Planning Policy Framework guidance that is used for development, and we picked up some of the key points that our councils are using this type of analysis for. So the first thing that came up is TRACC is really useful, or travel time analysis is really useful to help looking at public transport plans. So ensuring that any development that is done, that development site has a plan to ensure that people can get to and from that location via public transport, and ensuring that then public transport services are of a high quality as well. Also ensuring that any development that is done in a sustainable way and in a sustainable area. So ensuring that something that might be out of town, which might be cheaper to build on, still has that connectivity going into a central town location. Also ensuring that travel plans are made, so ensuring that both the highway network and the public transport network is there and can stand up to scrutiny to get these people over to key destinations and key sites. Also, as part of the travel plan as well is infrastructure changes and public transport services change and new roads are created. So whilst a typical plan or local plan might be for 15 years, it's really important to have the ongoing monitoring of that. And that's something that many of our district councils are doing, as they know that in this time of austerity at the moment and there's cuts taking place, you know, a bus route that might be here today might be gone tomorrow. And that's why this ongoing monitoring is really key and important. So ensuring that any new site that is built is always to be accessible to key services. So ensuring things such as education locations or employment sites are always readily and easily available. And then looking at more local services. So if you have a food shop or a primary school, you always want to ensure you're within a good walking distance of that. So typically a walking distance could be 10 minutes, and you want to make sure that you've got really accurate kind of analysis coming out of the side of things. So looking at how some councils used to do it, and we'll touch upon this later on, is a straight line approach. So what we've got here is a map showing in Godalming. We've got a location of a primary school at the moment, and then effectively we can model it either by time or by distance. And what we've done here is do a 1 kilometre buffer, showing everywhere that is yellow at the moment is 1 kilometre away from that primary school, and the other thing in kind of orange is 2 kilometres away. And we've tied in some census data showing that currently there's 8,233 people of total population using the 2011 census within that 10-minute kind of walk time or 1 kilometre. So what we can then do is, you can start adding the accuracy to this by using tools such as TRACC. So TRACC is a tool we developed here at Basemap. It was launched in November 2013. It's used by hundreds of different clients at the moment, ranging from central government to district councils to private sector to NHS. And what they're doing in the software is they're modelling travel times by different modes. So public transport, for example, they're looking at bus accessibility, train accessibility, tram accessibility, and all combinations of that, along with your traditional car, cycle, and walking modes. And they're doing this using great data from people like Ordnance Survey, Travelline, to ensure they're getting really kind of accurate results that are coming out. What they're also doing a lot of the time is editing that network. So what they're doing is, for example, using the school example, if you have pupils walking on a school that's deemed to be dangerous, maybe there's lots of accidents there, or there's not a footpath there, you can remove them dangerous roads to then actually accurately model a walking time for primary schools. Or if you wanted to look at the effectiveness of putting a new road in, a new footbridge over a main road, or a new bridge in, you can do that as well within the system. You can do the same with public transport as well. So if you heard on the grapevine that a certain bus route was being cut or removed, you can model that and you can remove that in the tool. Or if you wanted to model putting a brand new service in, that can also be completed. And the great thing is, by using TRACC, you get some really easy to understand outputs. So what we've got here on the left-hand side is a map showing walking access to, again, a primary school. The different colours are representing journey time. And then what we've done is we've overlaid the exact walking routes that we're undertaking. So if we take the kind of purple example at the bottom, we can see as the crow flies, it looks quite close, but actually using the curvature of the footpath and walking network, it's actually 2 or 3 times greater in distance. We can also produce things such as catchment maps being shown on the right-hand side at the moment. So if you live in a specific area, what's the closest school for you to get to based on travel time, as opposed to a crow flies approach. What we also can do as well is start tying in detailed demographic data showing how many people can get from a specific point or which location is the most accessible. And we can produce matrix files as well showing you the raw travel times between, say, a postcode or address location and a specific point as well. And we've got an example of that with our Harrogate case study later on. So if we then remind ourselves of our crow flies map that we had a minute ago with our 1 kilometre and 2 kilometres, and we plug exactly the same information but now using detailed Ordnance Survey walking route information and plug that into the system and see what 1 kilometre actually looks like, we can see it's a much smaller coverage. So again, if I cut back between the previous one and we look at the yellow area and we look at the reduction in size, we can see at the bottom that's represented as well by the population drop. So previously we had 8,233 people within 1 kilometre. We now have 4,170 people within that walk catchment. So then what you can do as well is if you said, oh, actually, we know that going over to the kind of east of the map, there's an area there that isn't very well accessible because of a river cutting off the location at the moment. We can then do the what-if scenario. So you can then start working with your local LEP to start looking at funding, or you can work with the county council to look at making improvements to that network. So if you had someone that lived in that area at the moment there, you can then say, well, actually, if we were to put a new footbridge across, we can see that yellow area now expanding out. And we can see next to 300 people can now do that journey. As that was deemed to be of importance, you can put a business case behind that. Or you can very easily say, actually discount it and say, well, actually, no, only a few hundred people are able to do that journey now. Let's not waste any funding of £5 million to put a new bridge in there. But it's giving that raw information, that raw data that you can make an informed decision on. So the reason why it's really important to use software is it basically helps you give the information you need to help support decisions of where a residential employment site should be located. Lots of councils have got lots of developers coming up to them and saying that we want to build here, it's a really sustainable place. But actually you having that information to hand puts you on the front foot. So it allows that actually, if you have a local development plan at the moment, you can ongoingly monitor that. And if you know that someone's coming in saying, actually, we want to build here and it's not very sustainable, it's not very accessible at the moment, you can say, well, actually, the infrastructure needs to change as part of that. And you can then have the confidence to do that. Or you might say, actually, the plan was made 10 years ago and it said it wasn't accessible then, but you know by using the TRACC software that actually a bus service now serves that area. There's been an improved cycle highway that's been put in as well. You can then ongoing monitor that and monitor those changes as well. So allowing you to see how, for example, walking and cycling travel times have changed over the last 10 years or 5 years, and how public transport journey times change as well. This is why it's really important to have that ongoing monitoring and that ongoing assessment against the local development plan to see how the infrastructure changes, the travel times change as part of it. And then you can then start providing advice, saying we know this area was no longer accessible, but if we were to do this service or do that, this will then improve and help promote things such as economic growth. So you can say, well, actually, we know there's going to be a new business park over there. We can then look at putting a bus service into that location, and that will then provide access to jobs for this new development site and for surrounding areas as well. And this is really important because the urban and rural area mix, urban areas generally are quite well accessible, but you can start looking at changing parameters to ensure that actually there's much more provision of these services that are more local to them. In the rural area, someone might be more likely to travel a greater distance, and you can model that as well. And that's exactly what Harrogate have done. So Harrogate have been looking, and every year they were basically manually doing accessibility analysis. So they were using a straight line approach. So they're going to each site individually and then working out how far away it was. Someone would either be tracing it on a map or using a GIS to do that. So the problem was, though, if someone come to him and say, well, actually, you said this is X distance away from a site at the moment, it wasn't always the most accurate way of looking at things. So by plugging that into TRACC and using detailed ordnance survey data, they've produced a methodology that was standardized across every location site. And the great thing about that is it would stand up at public inquiry if ever required, and it has done for other councils previously. And it also allowed them to very quickly and effectively deliver accessibility results as part of a sustainability appraisal. So they can plug something into the system. They've already got the data set up. They've already got their methodology set up. They could plug these locations in and get not just one location out at a time, but they could analyze 100 different sites all in one go. So it basically saved them a lot of time and a lot of money, and they put them in control of their own destiny as well. So North Yorkshire Council, all County Council are a TRACC client, but actually by doing this in-house, it put them on the front foot all the time, had all that information at their own fingertips. And the great thing as well is they could easily analyse the whole of their borough without any issues at all, and then they can then work out where there might be gaps and help out with economic growth, so working out improving access to business parks, which was seen as really important for them at the moment. And it's a really great quote we've got at the bottom from Tom, effectively saying that things that used to take weeks before can now be done in only a few hours. So starting now to look at the type of analysis and the outputs that were produced as part of this. So here we've got as a matrix file. Across the top, we've got various different destinations. So we've got primary schools, secondary schools, for example. We've then got, in this example, just 6 different sites. And then for each site, we've got a travel time in minutes via public transport and walk to their closest primary school or secondary school. So as we mentioned a minute ago in Harrogate, business parks are being seen as a key part of their growth strategy. So if you were to say, actually, we rank that as being the most important thing to access, you could then very clearly see that Site 5, for example, is only a 12-minute public transport commute to the closest business park, while something such as Site 2, which is really quite far away, actually has got almost a 1-hour public transport time and a much greater walk time to that site. So it's great by them able to analyse all of these different locations all in one go, and they can switch on the head and they can look at analysis of different business park locations as well. So on the left-hand side, having development sites, you can have business park sites there and looking at their connectivity to the surrounding area. So the great thing as well is as data improves all the time, Ordnance Survey have a new data set coming out called OS Highways, and by loading that in, it's got Tom really excited about using all these new data sets and doing much more detailed analysis that was previously wasn't possible. Though sometimes the report is great, sometimes it's great just to bring a map across. So what we've got here is 3 maps showing effectively travel time, access away from a site. It doesn't matter where that site is effectively going, it's showing travel time access. We then have some contours coming out. So the green colour is representing up to a 20-minute travel time. The kind of pinky purple colour is 40 minutes and the blue colour is 60 minutes. And you can quite clearly see here that the map on the left-hand side, Site A, which is right near the centre of Harrogate, has got by far the most connectivity. So the green area is spreading out to the north and to the south, following the main bus routes coming out of the town. And we can see that actually most of that map is purple. If we look at the second map, it's a pretty even purple and blue split, representing an average journey times to that site being between 20 and 60 minutes. And then if we look to the third map, so Site C on the right-hand side, which is actually showing that somewhere is much less accessible. So actually it's maybe slightly further away to the west in the town centre, and that's definitely being represented by the journey times being knocked off the back of that. And this is a thing that Harrogate really loves. You can see at the quote at the bottom, the standard methodology made sure that the results are fair to every single person, and most importantly, he's confident to stand behind the outputs that TRACC gives. And if you want more information on that, we've got more information on our case study, which is the link is shown at the bottom of the screen. So our second case study is looking at how Newcastle under Lyme and Tamworth effectively used the TRACC outputs to help them work out where development should be done in both authorities. Now, the really important thing here is this is a real mix of kind of urban and rural. And what they did here is slightly different, is they decided to work in partnership with Staffordshire County Council. And the reason for that is Staffordshire County Council, the county council itself, holds the keys when it comes to forcing a developer to make adjustments to the network or where they can make changes to the network where possible. So do the analysis and work out which areas are currently well accessible and good for employment sites at the moment, and produce travel time maps, as you can see on the right-hand side here, showing access to supermarkets on a Saturday between 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Then they worked out actually where there was gaps in the network. So they worked with the council to do the what if scenario. So what if we were to adjust this bus route? What if we were to put a new bus route in? What if we were to put a new footbridge in? And so working in partnership, they were able to do things like LSTF fund work to work out where a new footbridge should be located to help improve the overall accessibility to these sites. And they also were able to vary the results. So, for example, in a rural area, they decided that someone would walk a greater distance. I think they said 800 meters to get to a bus stop. But in the more urban areas, they changed the parameters in TRACC to show actually someone would only walk 400 meters to a bus stop, giving that flexibility to look at analysis for different councils to meet their exact needs. And again, we've got a much more detailed case study on our website. Please have a look at the bottom for further information. So another thing that has been touched upon as well is green spaces. As you may or may not know, there's a real kind of push at the moment towards active travel and promoting cycling and walking. And I actually read quite a scary statistic recently that actually 3/4 of our children spend less time outside than our prisoners at the moment. And, green spaces are seen as a real kind of key part of that. And, some parks have been kind of shut down as well with funding cuts recently. So looking at producing walk zone maps showing how far away you are from say a green space or a recreational park is quite an easy thing to do, but can have massive kind of health benefits leading on. So what you can easily do is create a map like this showing a 5-minute and 10-minute walk zone away from a map at the moment. You can add census data to work out where there might be gaps. So, there might be a specific area that isn't within 10 minutes walk to a park, but it's actually a lot of people are living there. So then you can start then putting funding towards improving and creating these new kind of safe play areas as well as part of it. So again, this can just give you lots of evidence to apply for funding or to invest in different locations as well as part of this. And this can be really useful. So you can produce these maps, but then how do you get these maps out to people? So, for example, Gloucestershire County Council, as part of their website, Inform Gloucestershire, produced all of these maps and made them available for all their residents to download. And many borough councils have very similar kind of mapping systems at the moment, showing you where you've got ongoing planning at the moment, or where you might have, car parks and things like that. It's very easy then to start overlaying travel time maps. So you can see very clearly where you live at the moment, how far your walk zone is to get to your local park or to your local GP or anything like that. Just helping get that information across to residents has a real kind of good knock-on effect. So by all means, have a look at that website and download some of the maps and see the type of analysis that council has done using our TRACC software. So that's kind of it for the webinar. Thank you very much for your time today. If you have any questions or if you'd like to have a copy of the slides, please email info@basemap.co.uk. If not, thank you very much and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Goodbye.